In your last class, we looked at the arc of a research paper, what goes into research before you write your research paper and when you write your research paper. Today we look at the structure of your essay, how you will go about structuring your Unit 3 essay. We'll look at how you can cite your resources, a few methods to look at unusual resources, and finally the homework for today, which is going to be your Unit 3 paper. We start off like any conventional essay with an introduction. What you do in the introduction is to set up and sharpen the focus of your reader. You need to clearly let your readers know what your topic is going to be and what your take on the topic is. What this does is to filter your reader's perspective. So once you give them the topic and your perspective on the topic, every example you use, every statement you make, they're going to look at that through the perspective of what you state in the introduction. So setting up your topic and setting up your specific perspective on the topic in the introduction really makes your writing more effective. It makes all the statements and the examples that follow that much more powerful, because readers are going to look at everything else that follows the introduction from the focus of what you set up on the introduction. You need not make a very direct statement to set up your perspective. For example, you need not make a statement like, I'm going to be talking about women's rights. That sounds too short-handed and lazy. Look at interesting ways on how you can make a statement and establish your topic and your perspective on the topic. Sontag's essays regarding the pain of others, as well as the Lara Croft essay, state their perspective very clearly in the introduction. At the same time, they're very articulate. They use unusual methods, whether it's stating a fact, making a sweeping statement, putting forth numbers. They use all these various techniques, or a combination of these, to sort of establish their perspective on the topic in the introduction. So think of new ways and innovative ways of establishing your point of view and your topic in the introduction, and setting up the focus of the reader. What comes next is elaborate. You said you're going to say, okay, this is my stance, this is my topic, and then you elaborate. You make more statements. You do a lot more analysis. This is in the paragraphs following the introduction, right? So you give them specific details. So you don't just say women's rights are an issue. You need to be very specific. Women's rights in corporate America are not elaborate enough. So, and not just statements like that. Even when you're doing your analysis, when you're giving examples, be as specific as you can, because the more specific you are, the more authentic your writing seems to your reader, and they believe you that much more. Vague statements makes the reader disbelieve what you're saying. Always try and have at least a few individual examples. So think of it as a zoom in from a group to a specific face. So you can say 80% of the women who work on the East Coast did not know the procedure and how you can complain about harassment. And zoom in on the case of a specific individual and say, this manager working in upstate New York faced this kind of an issue, and explain her issue. So what this does is, yes, when you say a big group of people faces a given kind of problem, you're letting your readers know that this is something which is faced by a lot of people. But when you give an individual example, a specific name, an identity, what happens is there is this personal connection formed right away. There is a human connection formed, so your readers are immediately invested. So use people effectively in your essay to make sure that your readers connect with your writing and with the topic on hand. And most importantly, there should be a sense of personal investment. You should clearly state your opinions. You should clearly articulate your own analysis on the topic. Your essay should not be an amalgamation of citations or quotes pasted from different resources, because if your personal investment is not clearly shown in the essay, the reader will think you are not interested in the topic enough. So then the reader interest goes down. So these are the three most important points when you elaborate on the topic you're talking about. Obviously, once you make a statement, once you do a certain degree of analysis, you support that with the right kind of examples. What kind of examples do you provide? That depends on the sort of relationship you want to build with your reader. So if you want them to recognize an issue on hand, then using a statistical code or even using an expert's opinion will be helpful. So for instance, you can say 21% of even modern Western countries have war schools, or you can say so and so from the UN says that most modern countries today have war schools. So that right away makes readers understand that this is an important issue on hand. If you want to have an emotional and intellect connect with your reader, or if you want to get them to revise their opinion on a given topic, usually you use statistical examples and expert opinions, a combination of both. And similarly, if you want to have your readers respond to something that you're saying, we usually repeat the cycle of elaborate an example at least a couple of times. Each time you come to a new cycle of elaborate an example, what you do is make a new statement, show a new perspective, bring in a different form of analysis. What you then and then of course use examples to support each statement or analysis. So once you repeat it 2 or 3 times, what that does is it firmly establishes your perspective in the reader's mind. It makes them appreciate and respect the fact that what you're saying is important. One thing you can do is extend your argument when you move from one point to the other. So when you're moving from one elaborate example cycle to the next, look at ways in which you can connect both those two cycles. That way, there is a certain sense of flow to your writing. So once you've done that 2 or 3 times, then you extend your argument. You usually have one or at the most 2 cycles of extension. What you do in extend the extend cycle is talking about what else is being affected because of the issue on hand, who else is being affected, where else is this issue prevalent, and how are the other ways in which it is manifesting. So you can say women not being aware of their rights is not only affecting the women themselves and their immediate families, it is also affecting their the people who report to these women, are the people who are the colleagues of these women. Similarly, you can say war schools are not just in developing countries, it's also in developed countries. So basically you're extending your argument and saying it's not just one section of the population being affected or one physical location being extended. It's a much bigger thing than that. So this makes it gives a sense of immediacy. It also gives a sense of depth to your topic, and readers immediately know that this is something that needs to be thought about. Finally, you go to the closure. What you do in the closure is, if you started any arguments throughout your paper, then you close those arguments in a solid way, close the loops on those arguments. So if you say, well, 9/11 was not a conspiracy theory, it was a terrorist attack, then make a conclusive statement to that. And don't just make a statement, give an example or an expert opinion, cite from your resources. Basically make sure you close the loop completely, because if you alone make the statement, it might not be sufficient for the reader. So think of ways in which you can close the loop of your arguments in a manner in which that seems credible to your readers. Always end on a powerful statement so that your reader is thinking about what you're saying throughout the essay, because if your closure is not strong enough, they won't go about thinking about your essay. So close in such a manner that your reader will want to think more about what you've said. End with an insight on your take on the topic. This could be like either a fresh insight or you may be elaborating on an insight that you've already stated above, or if in some cases you're restating your perspective. So, but your presence as a writer should be there in the closure. Your unique personality as a writer should stand out in the closure. And finally, where relevant, you need to leave further resources. For instance, I had a student of mine who wrote about cults and how they're affecting the young generation today in an unhealthy way. So she ended her paper by writing about help resources you can contact if you think someone you know is trying to be lured in by cults. So relevant resources are always helpful. So that's how you structure your essay. So one note is you use resources. The resources that you use will be used both in the elaborate cycle and to both elaborate and to give examples. But how do you cite your resources in the elaborate example or even in the extent section? Uh, let's look at why. I mean, this is something we covered in the last class in terms of why we're looking for resources, but a quick summary. One is to support a claim you've made or add credibility. For instance, if you as a writer say smoking is injurious to health, your readers might not believe it. But if you have a cancer, if you're quoting from a cancer expert, then it adds credibility to your statement. Giving examples and different perspectives on the same subject. So if you looked at the Lara Croft essay, there's so many different perspectives on the same subject. So that's one reason why you cite resources. If you want to take a specific position that you want readers to disagree or agree with because you're agreeing or disagreeing with the resource, with the perspective, that's when you cite resources. So if you want to say 9/11 was not a conspiracy theory, it was a terrorist attack, you use resources that prove your fact and also disprove the fact of it being a conspiracy theory. Sometimes you can also quote, like if you want to highlight a specific phrase, a sentence, because it's very important, you can quote those pieces directly, those sentences or phrases directly. It's like what you did in your Unit 2 essay. You use quotations directly from Sontag because those really lent a lot of weight to what you were saying in your Unit 2 essay. There are three ways of using citing resources. One is quotations, where your source is used word for word, like what you did in your Unit 2 Sontag essay. But remember, quotes should be used very sparingly, only for the most important, where the words are very, very important. For instance, one phrase which a lot of you use for Unit 2 essay, one phrase which you cited and used direct quotes for was the words, "there is no collective memory." Those are very important words, so it's fine to quote something like that. But in other cases where the original words are not important but the point is important, that's when you paraphrase. You use your own words and use a condensed version of a section of the original essay. Summary is where you summarize the main ideas of a whole paper. It gives you the broad overview of your resource. Paraphrase looks at a specific section within the resource, and this specific section is used to support your point. So if you're making a point, then you use a specific section of your resource to support your point. If you want to summarize the main ideas of a paper, then use the summary method. There's a clear distinction between the two. So you could follow summary by paraphrase if you want to when you're making a point and using an example to support it from your original resource. But always remember, paraphrase condenses a specific section. Summary gives you the main idea of your whole paper. Sometimes you can also use a combination. So this is an example where what the author has done is quoting from the book Interpretation of Dreams by Freud, and she is using paraphrase, but is also is quoting a few words directly from the original text, right? So the original text, wherever words from the original text have been used, she's been using quotation marks, and for the rest, these are her own words, her paraphrased version of the original text. So this is a good example of how you can use a combination of these techniques of quotation and paraphrase. A few best practices before you decide on citing a few keywords or citing specific lines. Read your whole resource and make a note of the key points in the main ideas. Give a summary of what the paper is, a one-line summary of what the whole paper is, and specific sections which you think you can really use to support your own essay. Paraphrase only those sections. So then if you want, you can sprinkle the summary somewhere in your paper, but then when you make a point and you want to support the point with text from your source, then you can use whatever your paraphrase. Those can be directly used to support your own essay. Consider a few brief passage of phrases, important phrases. Again, I said quoting should be used very sparingly. This is something like, "there is no collective memory." A strong phrase like that, which you know will immediately add a lot of weight to your essay. Consider, like, highlight those and underline those and consider using those in your essay in the form of quotes. A little bit more on paraphrasing before we move on. Uh, if the original text is undistinguished, it doesn't have very spectacular phrasing, and it's all right for you to present those ideas in your own words. If the essence of the original is not lost by using your own words, then use paraphrase. It's more detailed than summary because summary is for the whole essay and paraphrase is for a specific section, which is why to support your own points and analysis you usually use paraphrase and not summary. And we don't want to rely on too much quoting. We use quotations very, very selectively. So paraphrase is a good, healthy option, alternative to quoting. Also, if you notice when you paraphrase important sections, you grasp the full meaning because successful paraphrasing really requires you to closely read your text. So it makes sure that you grasp the full meaning of the original text. And that helps you understand the original text and also helps you further clarify the point you're making, because you paraphrase typically to support the point or analysis that you're doing. So it's a very, very helpful process, and I would highly recommend using this technique. Moving on, looking at unusual resources. So for example, I was writing this paper on gender equality in the arts, and I just went to the academic search premier and did a keyword search on gender and photography and role, and I got these articles with interesting photographs. So this is about a couple that posed with masks, and they posed in their gardens, with their car, in their family room, basically family photographs. But if you notice in the first picture, this is the husband and this is the wife. But towards the end, the wife ended up losing so much weight because she was a cancer patient. The roles got reversed. Sorry, the husband lost a lot of weight because he was a cancer patient, so the roles get reversed. So in this picture, the husband is actually dressed in the role of the wife, and the wife is dressed in the role of the husband. So the clothing has been reversed, but because of a change in physicality, because of cancer, there is a sort of role reversal that's happening just by changing the costumes. And if you look at this, you have the same man posing as a young man, as an old man, and also as a middle-aged woman. So I got both these papers by looking at the original resources, by looking at the academic search premier, and using unusual search keyword searches. So I wrote an entire paper on how masking can be used as a tool to hide gender and identity and create connections across the topics of art and gender. This is another interesting resource I got on how stereotyping is used as a means to prevent connections between people, and how you can expect a predetermined response, as in case of Lara Croft's image. So this is a photographer's self-portrait, and how she tried photographing herself in typical settings, in stereotypical settings, and then made fun of, in a way of making fun of these stereotypes, and talking about how these stereotypes can be used to prevent connections from being formed, and getting a predetermined response. So a few ideas for getting unusual resources. Think of new context for your topic. So like I knew like gender and photography is an unusual search combination because of a few papers I'd read before. So that's why I use these kind of search phrases saying gender and photography. So the search combination gave me these results. But if you don't have a context of key phrases that you already have in your mind, which you can combine with your topic, to get unusual resources, what you can then do is search for your topic plus controversies or the phrase new thoughts or issues, and that will yield a lot of unusual results. Okay, so for example, these are a few interesting topics I got in conventional topics. Social networking is something people typically write their essays on, but they write about social networking's impact on the youth today, on our dependence on social networking and how it's making us asocial. But this was an interesting essay I got on social networking and the stalking syndrome, similar to the Downs syndrome, and sibling relationships, job security during cancer treatment. So these are all unusual perspectives on topics that have already been written about So this is something you might consider doing for picking up unusual resources for your research essay, Unit 3 essay. So for the homework today, finish writing the first draft of your Unit 3 essay. I've uploaded the prompt in the Week 7 Class 2 assignment. Read the prompt in detail before you respond to it. The prompt is also available as Week 7 Class 2, as Unit 3 essay prompt. So it's Unit 3 essay prompt, and it's also available in the Week 7 Class 2 assignment. On top of your essay, when you're submitting the first draft of your essay, right on top, please write down what your central research question is and also what the purpose and relationship with your audience is. To know what purpose and relationship mean, please refer to our last class, because that's where I picked up these phrases from. The length is about 3 to 5 pages for your first draft, and the due date is next Tuesday, 24th of July. Upload this under Week 7 Class 2 assignment. Thank you.